Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have a little bit of a special review. This is my first review for you filming using my new camera. So as you might have seen in my recent channel posts, unfortunately my trusty Sony camcorder that I've been using the last 5 years, something like that, it died. The little memory card slot broke and the thing just won't even register that it has a memory card now. So yeah, I will take it apart and see if I can fix it. It could serve as a good backup camera, but I'd been planning on kind of upgrading the camera in time for review number 3000, and I just kind of thought, you know, why not bring this forward a little bit, and so here we are. So I'm now filming for you using a GoPro Hero 9, which I've been very impressed with so far. I've been playing around with it and testing it over the last couple of days, and I have to say that the picture quality on this thing is really impressive. I still need to get used to the editing software a little bit that comes with the camera, because this one seems to split the video file into segments and then you piece it together and render it a little bit later on. So still getting used to that, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. So you can look forward to some 4K reviews at some point in the future, but in the meantime we'll use the 1080 and it looks really good, I have to say. So I will apologise in advance for any kind of teething problems we have with the reviews over the next little while. It will take a little bit of time to get used to, you know, new orientations, the new recording system and stuff like that, but you know, as long as the quality of the beer reviews remains the same, I don't see the problem. And it is, you know, YouTube beer review and it's not meant to be taken madly seriously, you know. But yeah, to christen the new camera, I've decided to go for a beer that I'm really quite excited to try. This is a style of beer that I really love. It's the style of beer that really kind of kicked off my whole craft beer journey, and this one comes to you from a Swedish brewery who are very well respected and have featured on the channel many a time before. I think I've done about 50 reviews from these guys so far, actually. So for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Stigbergets Bryggeri. So this beer seems to be from a new series that they're doing called Ringöbräu. So this beer goes by the name Ringöbräu Rauchbier. So I think you know what style of beer this one is. It comes in at 5% ABV, and this was released as part of the Lokalt Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 1st of February 2021. So yeah, really curious to see how this beer turns out. As I said to you earlier, the Rauch beers were the ones that really kind of got me into craft beer in the first place. My friend Daniel, who now lives in Bamberg, he took me to the Moorings bar in Aberdeen and got me a bottle of Schlenkerla, and I just, you know, fell in love with it. It was really strange to have such a big kind of smoky beer, and that was it. You know, I started discovering, you know, the Scotch ales, the quadrupels and things like that afterwards, and then I moved into the lighter stuff a little bit later on. So yeah, definitely very curious to see how Stigbergets interpret this style. I've had some interesting traditional beers from these guys in recent times. Recently they released a tripel and also an English barley wine, which I was really impressed with, and then a few months back I had the Pilsner as well, and from what I understand in March they're going to release the Ringöbräu Helles, so I'm going to make sure I get a can of that to review for you here on the channel as well. But you know, this being the style that kind of kick-started my my whole craft beer journey, I thought this would be a nice way to kind of kick-start the new era with the new camera here on the channel. So I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one, and as I said, I'm very curious to see how it turns out. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Stigbergets Bryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri then. So as I've mentioned to you already, Stigbergets Bryggeri are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, up there on the Swedish west coast, and the company was founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsen. So these two guys own two bars that share the one kitchen. This is Bar Kino and the Hagabions Cafe, which can be found on Linegatan in the city, and they both opened back in 2007. The building in which these two bars are located is actually an independent cinema, and until I actually went and visited the place, I didn't know that. I never made the connection between Bar Kino and a cinema, but they've got some really interesting films there, and if you're interested you can check out my out and about video that I filmed there. That was filmed mainly in the Bar Kino in the basement, and I'm hoping that the next time I go there I can film a little bit more in the Hagabions Cafe. But those two venues are kind of the unofficial tap rooms of both Stigbergets and OO Brewing in Gothenburg. But originally the idea that Nils and Richard had was that they wanted to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, but this led to them kegging the beers and selling it to other pubs, and eventually they began bottling the beers back in November of 2014. The original beers that they were producing were mainly English and German styles, but of course this brewery really started to build its reputation when they focused on the more kind of hoppy American styles of beer. The original head brewer was Orly Anderson, who is also one of the co-owners of OO Brewing, and that's where he is now spending all of his time. He stayed with Stigbergets until, I want to say, April of 2017, and he was replaced for a short period of time by Barnaby Struve, who was one of the vice presidents at Three Floyds over in Munster in Indiana, quite close to Chicago in America. Quite a famous brewery, that I have to say. But a little bit later on, I want to say in 2018, they moved to a brewery at Partihalarna, where they were brewing 5,000 litre batches, and they've also started working on some sour beers more recently as well. But they started selling their beers in these 440 milliliter cans, which has helped them export a lot more over the last few years. They were originally selling their beers in 330 milliliter bottles, and if you go back and check out my very early Stigbergets reviews, you can get a look at those. But they now have a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and also Lucas Monroyd, who was previously with All In Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in the Gothenburg area. But they've just moved, as of summer 2020, into a new brewery in Ringön, hence the name Ringöbräu on this beer, and they're actually considering brewing some lambic beer there, from what I understand, and apparently they might have a bar and also swimming facilities there as well. They were talking in the beernews.se article that I read that they want to open up a kind of experience brewery, so I'll be interested to see how that kind of plays out. But they also opened up a bar in Stockholm in April, I think it was, of 2020, and they opened up a folköl shop in Gothenburg as well. So for those of you watching outside of Sweden, folköl in Sweden is beer that is 3.5% and below. That can be sold in the supermarkets. Anything above 3.5% alcohol has to be sold in the state-owned alcohol shops, or Systembolaget as they're known. But yeah, quite cool that they've got their own folköl shop, I have to say. That's quite an unusual thing, but there is actually a folköl shop in Stockholm, if I remember rightly, that's got some really interesting beers. But as of February 2021 it is now, as of February 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 100 different kinds of beers, and they're mainly known for the kind of New England hazy style IPAs, but they have produced quite a few other things as well. Probably their most famous beers would be the GBG Beer Week beer of 2016, which is now known as the new and improved GBG Beer Week. I do recommend that you check that out, and the Amazing Haze is their kind of flagship New England IPA. So if you get the chance to try either of those beers, do make sure you check them out. But recently they've been doing some very, very nice IPAs actually. The Mistler, the Chronic was another good one, the King of Hops. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. Was it Charismatico, or was that OO Brewing? I forget. But yeah, I've had some very, very good beers from Stigbergets over the last little while. Probably the Chronic is the best one I've had within the last kind of 6 months, actually. But yeah, do make sure you check out this brewery if you get the chance. Like I say, very well known for the kind of hazy New England IPAs, and it's nice to see them kind of diversifying their styles a little bit. Recently, they released a black IPA and also a West Coast IPA, but unfortunately, those were limited to the Gothenburg area, and I wasn't able to get a hold of those. But you never know, maybe we can get a hold of them some other way. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Stigbergets Bryggeri for the moment. As I said to you earlier, a very well respected Swedish craft brewery, and one that I would highly recommend that you check out. But yeah, let's get on to the tasting of this beer then. If you want to learn more about the brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on the can here before we open it up. As you can see, it's really quite traditional in German, actually. I think this is the outline of their new factory at Ringen in Gothenburg that they have. And yeah, I have to say I do like the theme of these cans. So I wonder if this will be a beer that will be released every year and stuff like that. But I'm really curious to see how the Ringöbräu Helles turns out, actually. And I guess maybe the month after that we might see a Dunkel and a Schwarzbier and things like that. But it's nice to see, generally speaking, in the craft beer world, that the German styles of beer are getting a bit more attention these days. But yeah, this one, as you can see, it's a 440ml can, 5% Rauchbier. Obviously, the most famous example of this style of beer would be the Schlenkerla from Bamberg in Franconia in northern Bavaria in Germany. Really beautiful place, by the way, if you can go and visit it. That Franconia region has the highest density of breweries per head of population anywhere in the world. And yeah, basically, these Rauch beers are very famous. It's malt that is smoked using an open beechwood fire, basically, which is quite interesting. But yeah, 440ml can, this one. I think I paid about 30 or 35 Swedish kroners for this, so that translates to roughly about €3.50, £3 and I guess, you know, probably in the region of $4 for it. But remember, these Rauch beers are lager beers. And remember, the basic definition of a lager is cold fermentation. So fermentation takes place between 10 to 12 degrees. And yeah, you call that bottom fermenting yeast. But yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. And hopefully it's a good beer. Gold top on the can. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Just curious to see what this has in store for us. Yeah. Here we are. Awesome. Yeah, we've still got a little bit left in the can, but I guess that will do for the moment, and we'll put the rest in a little bit later. But yeah, I have to say, that is a pretty dark Rauch beer. You can see that it's poured with a solid finger and a bit of a frothy, I would say very light kind of beige head on this one. I don't know if fawn is maybe a good way to describe the colour of this one, but there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and you can see the head is gradually just kind of receding away. But yeah, in terms of its colour, you can see that's a lovely kind of dark ebony sort of colour, to be honest with you. This is definitely one of the darker Rauch beers that I've come across, but if you shine light through it, you can see that it's got a lovely kind of ruby hue to it, actually. But yeah, I mean, if you go to breweries like Schlenkerla or Spezial is the other one in Bamberg that is quite famous for the Rauch beers. There's quite a few different varieties of these Rauch beers, of course. You know, you get the Doppelbock, you get the Märzen, you get the Weizen, there's the Fasten beer as well, actually, and they do have just a regular kind of lager beer, come to think of it too. So yeah, my favourite probably out of all of the Schlenkerla beers would be probably the Eiche Doppelbock. You know, that beer is just a beast, the one that they smoke using the oak wood. But out of the regular ones, probably I like the Urbock. I do really enjoy the Urbock, but I have to say, compared to what I remember the likes of the Märzens and stuff being, this one does come across quite a bit darker. But you know, it just says Rauch beer. It doesn't actually say whether it's supposed to be a Märzen, a Bock beer, or exactly what kind of Rauch beer it is. But yeah, the Rauch beer, as I mentioned already, is a lager beer. But yeah, certainly looks the part. As I say, a bit darker than some of the other Rauch beers that I've come across before. But yeah, it should be really interesting. Let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Yeah. Love the aroma of these beers. I could sit and smell them all day. Yeah. One of the things I would also point out about smokiness in beers, you know, in Scotland we have peated malts, which have that lovely kind of smokiness to them, and that's a more sort of grassy, earthy sort of smokiness. These German Rauch malts, and it's definitely German Rauch malts that's in here, they have a more kind of meaty sort of barbecue. No, I don't know if barbecue is the right word. Barbecue's a bit too sweet, but they've got a big kind of meaty, porky kind of smokiness to them, and you get that right away with this beer. It just smells absolutely lovely. But the thing I'm also noticing about this beer too, the first thing that jumps out on the aroma for me is that it seems to be like a really bready leaning Rauchbier. Underneath that kind of big smoky note, you can definitely pick out a bit of a very toasty, well-fired bread crust in there. There's some nice kind of brown bready notes in there. It is kind of like a German rye bread in a lot of ways. I do miss the rye breads, actually. I loved the German bakeries when I lived in Heidelberg, the pretzels, the rye breads, all these things. But yeah, the aroma of that beer is absolutely lovely. So yeah, definitely a kind of toasty bread crusty backbone to it. It's got a lovely kind of rye bready smoothness in there as well, and you can just smell those big smoky meaty qualities sitting in there underneath. You will get one or two kind of undertones of wood in this one. You know, as I say, it's beech wood that they use to smoke the malt here, so it does come across as quite woody in some ways. There are one or two little nutty elements to the beer as well, but yeah, that lovely big kind of meaty smokiness in there. There's one or two wee hints of a very slight sort of biscuity kind of sweetness in there, but mainly the malty side of this beer is well-fired bread crust, brown bread, kind of brown German rye bread, like I said, then those big kind of meaty qualities. So I really like how everything goes together on the malty side of the aroma here. It's the smokiness itself just has such a complexity to it. You've got meatiness in there, you've got the woodiness, and then you've got a bit of breadiness as well. It's awesome. These Rauch malts are something that you just need to really experience for yourself. But this style of beer is very much an acquired taste, so just have a go at it and see what you think. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy them. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. I think we've said everything that we really need to about the malty side of the aroma, but as I say, I could sit and smell these all day. The more that I smell of it, actually, it does develop just a wee touch of a kind of brown sugary sweetness. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things though, there's a wee touch of earthiness in this one. This will have Hallertau hops from Bavaria, or Tettnang hops from Baden-Württemberg in it. As an outside bet, there might be some Czech Sats or whatever, but I would suspect it's German hops that are in here. So yeah, you get that kind of soft but still quite smooth earthiness that you would expect of these noble type hops. There's a nice little bit of floral aromaticity to the beer, but quite a smooth floral aromaticity, not too bright or spicy or anything like that, and just a little bit of a kind of lighter grassy quality to the beer as well. So I really like how that pieces together in this one as well. So yeah, the hoppy side of this beer, the green component of the hops, is kind of exactly what you'd expect. On the fruity side of things, you do get a wee tiny hint of a slightly kind of red fruity character out of this one. You can smell just a wee teeny hint of like a slightly, raisiny sharpness in there, but otherwise, it's maybe just like a little bit of a kind of soft blackcurranty sort of thing. But the fruity side of this beer, I think, really takes a bit of a back seat. There's maybe, you do get a wee bit of that kind of peary sort of thing. You do get just a little bit of that kind of peary and slightly grassy, citrusy kind of ester out of the beer. There's really not a lot to report from the aroma on the fruity side of things with this beer. But yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it. It does come across as very unique in that regard. It is quite different actually from either the Spezial Rauchbier that I've had, the Spezial Lager Rauchbier, or the Schlenkerlatz. This one is the bready, kind of bread crusty component that makes this one kind of stand out a little bit. It's almost got a wee bit of a kind of Schwarzbier, Czech Tmawy type vibe to it, in honesty. So yeah, as I say, take a bit of time to enjoy that, but we're going to get stuck into this one now. So this one is the Ringöbräu Rauchbier, coming in at 5% ABV from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg, here in Sweden, up there on the west coast. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skull, cheers, and here's to the new era of Rampant Lion reviews on the GoPro. Cheers, skull. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. First impression of it is, again, it kind of lives up to what you might expect from the aroma. This is actually quite a, dry, bread crusty sort of Rauch beer, this one. So yeah, it has got a wee bit of that kind of Schwarzbier element to it. So yeah, That's a really interesting one. I like this beer. I'm going to say thumbs up to Stigbergets right away on this one. And if they can produce a Rauch beer like this, I'm curious to see what the hell this is going to be like. But yeah, it's definitely got a wee bit, as I say, the thing that comes into my head with this one is that it's definitely got a wee bit of that sort of Schwarzbier, Tamavi type quality to it. So remember with these lager beers, you've got the Czech and the German versions. The Czech beers I think tend to be a little bit more kind of yeasty and bready and smooth if you like, whereas the German ones have a little bit more kind of crispness to them, and you definitely get that out of this. So you've got different styles of beer, and then you've got the different kind of analogues, if you like, between them. So in Germany, they've got the Helles, the blonde lager. In the Czech Republic, they've got the Svetli. In Germany, they've got the Märzen, which is the kind of amber lager. In the Czech Republic, they call that the Leitzach. In Germany, the Dunkel, which is the kind of mahogany coloured one. Czechs call it the Cherny. Then you've got the Schwarzbier, the black lager, which is called the Tamavi in the Czech Republic. You've also got a few other lager beers like the Bock beer from Einbeck in Germany. You've got the Vienna lager from Vienna, which is really nice. I really love those. And you've also got the Doppelbock in Germany as well, which is basically a very strong Dunkel, I guess we could say. But yeah, this beer definitely kind of exhibits the sort of, for a lager beer, it definitely, we've also got the Pilsner from the Czech Republic, forgetting about that one, that's terrible. But yeah, this beer really kind of shows those kind of crisp German qualities rather than the Czech ones. And even if we're considering this sort of almost Schwarzbier type quality that it has, because it really does exhibit a few of the things you would normally expect to that, particularly the kind of bread crusty notes. That really forms the backbone of this beer, to be honest with you. So yeah, this is definitely quite a quirky one, actually. So yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this beer for you then. So straight away with this beer, in the middle third of your palate, you can feel that toasty, well-fired, bread crusty quality just going right across the middle of your palate there. And it does develop a bit of dryness the further you go into the aftertaste, but on top of that, you can feel a nice kind of smooth brown bready character there. In the middle third of your palate, it's distinctly more like a rye bread. It's got a little kind of touch of sweetness to it, come to think of it. So yeah, you do get a little bit of a kind of smooth kind of sweetness to this beer. But then as you go further back into that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there is like a really dry, it's almost a little bit kind of black malty, to be honest with you. It's got a wee bit of that sort of vibe to it. Then on the back third of your palate, you really get more and more of that kind of toasty, bread crusty sort of thing coming out of the beer. So yeah, it's really kind of quirky in that regard. We're only talking about the backbone of the beer so far as well, but you know, if you move back, you can feel on the back third of your palate, it does thicken up a wee bit. You know, the beer does have a nice kind of thick sort of kind of wholemealy, brown bready sort of quality there, on that back third of your palate. So if you go to the very back and move forward, you can feel that thickness there. As you reach that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, it just kind of drops away. The thickness just drops away, and you've got that nice kind of smoothness again in that sort of more. You can just feel that the beer is a little bit kind of lighter in the middle third of your palate again. So in terms of the smoky character, that sort of almost sweet rye bready quality that I was talking about in this beer, it feels like the sort of meaty smoky elements are just kind of infused into that, if you like. And if you go to the front corners of your palate, then just move diagonally back, you'll feel the kind of woody notes coming out of this beer too. It does actually develop a fair little bit of dryness the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, you can feel that the beer gets a little bit kind of thicker, and you can feel that the beer just gets a little bit kind of thicker and drier the further that you go into the aftertaste, actually. So yeah, this is a really interesting Rauch beer. It's got all the kind of components of the flavour that you would expect from this style, but it just kind of goes about its business in a slightly different way. So yeah, I can really appreciate that about this. Like I say, toasty bread crust underneath, rye bread on top, the smoky kind of characters infused into that. You can feel some woody notes coming out of it a little bit later. If you go into that kind of centre of your palate and then just move forward a wee bit, you can feel a few kind of nutty notes coming out of it. But if you follow that kind of central line down the middle of your palate, that's where you get the kind of most highly kind of concentrated meaty qualities out of the beer. But yeah, if you go to the very centre of your palate, there is a wee touch of kind of brown sugar in there. I'm not sure if I would go quite as far as a kind of full-blown caramel. It is a little bit more like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit, and as you gradually move out from the centre of your palate, you can feel it just gets a little bit more kind of grainy, and that flavour gradually gives way to the the more kind of brown bready kind of elements of this beer as well. So yeah, the malty side of this beer is really quite interesting, and it definitely has a wee bit of that kind of Schwarzbier quality. That well-fired bread crusty note that the beer has gives the beer an almost kind of crisp quality, and that's what really makes me think of like a German Schwarzbier. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there, and the earthy qualities actually do have a little bit of kind of power behind them, if you like, a bit of bite behind them. In the back corners of this beer, could they have used a slightly higher alpha acid hop than simply, Hallertau or Tet9? Could it be Pearl or Hercules or something in here? Not sure. But yeah, there is a wee bit of earthy bitterness there. As you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality. Then as you reach the front corners of the palate, it's got a nice kind of floral aromaticity to it as well. Round the front curve of the tongue, the beer has a little bit of a kind of lighter grassiness to it, and you do pick up just a wee kind of slightly citrusy sort of side on the beer there as well. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer, it's not going to blow the head off you in terms of bitterness. These Rauch beers do tend to be more kind of malt orientated, if that makes sense. But yeah, on the fruity side of things, it's quite interesting. As I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So on that border region between middle third and kind of front third of your palate, you get a little bit more of that kind of dry, you do get a wee bit more of that sort of dry, kind of toasty, well-fired bread crusty sort of thing. You can feel that there, but then as you move further forward into that kind of front third of your palate, you can feel the kind of toasty, dry bread crusty notes. They form the baseline of the fruity side of the beer. But there's not too much to report there. When you take the beer in, it's got a wee bit of a kind of juicy sort of figgy sort of thing to it. There's a one or two little kind of, there might be a wee tiny hint of like a kind of blackcurranty note or something. And yeah, the fruity side of this beer I think is quite interesting. Yeah, I think it's a very light sort of kind of figgy, juicy note that you get out of this one. You might get one or two little kind of sultana-like flavours as well, so I think I would go with that. It's a sort of sultana type flavour that you get on that front third of your palate, and then a wee bit of a kind of juicy figgy note there. Maybe on the very front edge of the tongue you get a wee tiny touch of like a very slight blackcurrant flavour or something like that, but there's really not too much to report in terms of fruitiness with this beer. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, this. I mean, in a lot of ways I do find this beer, as I say, to have quite a bit of Schwarzbier character to it. It's almost like a kind of Rauch Schwarzbier in a lot of ways, this one, because the Schlenkerla ones they would have a little bit more, this one's got a good bit of dryness to it, whereas if I think about the Märzen, it's got a little bit more kind of sweetness, if you like, and a kind of smoother breadiness. And if I think about the Urbock, it's got a more of a kind of brown sugary quality to it as well. So overall, when it comes to Rauch beers, I would describe this one as being quite a dry Rauch beer, but it's got all of the different kind of flavour components that you would expect, and I've certainly enjoyed this. I've enjoyed this beer, I have to say. So let's kind of round off with the mouthfeel then. Mouthfeel wise, I would say that this beer, it's pretty, it's kind of bottom end and mid-bodied. It's kind of typical for what you'd expect of a lager beer. The carbonation is quite smooth. The overall feel of the beer is quite smooth and quite slick in a lot of ways, but like I said, it does develop a good bit of dryness the further you go into the aftertaste. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this one is your kind of standard 25-ish IBUs. That's quite common level for a lager beer actually, but you get a good bit of dryness, and I think you can probably count a bit of the bitterness from the malty side of this beer in the IBU count as well with this one. So it could well be a little bit higher than that. Remember, when it comes to the IBUs, that's my weakest point of beer reviewing, to be honest with you. But when it comes to the malty side of things, like I say, you've got a good bit of dryness that develops there from the well-fired bread crust. You've got a good bit of smoothness from the bread, and you do get just a wee touch of kind of sweetness out of the beer as well. But those lovely beech smoked meaty kind of smoky flavours in this one, they just sit there, and it kind of feels like they're infused into that brown bread, you know, that I was talking about. But there's a lovely little bit of a kind of juicy fruity character to this one. It's not too prominent, like I said, but I mean, overall I think this beer is pretty interesting. So yeah, it's been really cool to review this one, and it's nice to see Stigbergets do something just a little bit different actually. So yeah, I think I maybe need to send a can of this to my friend Peter, the Clueless Drinker, because I think he might appreciate this one. But like I say, quite different to the kind of German Rauch beers that I've come across before. Definitely a few kind of Schwarzbier type qualities in this one for me, and it does maintain that kind of smoothness you expect of a lager beer, because remember, that's what it is, but it's also just got a wee bit of Schwarzbier quality to it as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together, and I would recommend that you try it if you get the chance. I'm curious to see what their Helles beer is going to be like as well. But this was a really nice beer to kick off the era with the new camera here on the channel, and I hope that you guys enjoyed my take on it as well. I hope these German kind of traditional beers become a kind of mainstay of what Stigbergets are going to do. But yeah, let's leave it at that then. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know what your own thoughts are on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Stigbergets Brewery. Let me know what your favourite Rauch beers are. It would be interesting to hear about some different Rauch beers that I might not have heard of. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. As I said, this one was the Ringöbräu Rauchbier, coming in at 5% ABV from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Ringen in Gothenburg, Göteborg on the west coast of Sweden. So yeah, really interesting beer, and I've enjoyed this one. Until the next time, check out my social media, check out this brewery, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slange, skål, cheers, and see you guys in the next review.